Hello everybody, welcome to this week's additional club development video. This week we have put an additional video in place because of the fantastic press release that went out yesterday about return to play and the guidance that is based around. So we've got Ian Walker joining us to discuss that, and we'll chat through some of the questions and kind of discuss the guidance and what it might mean to everybody. Hey Ian, how are you?
Hi Rob, yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, a bit frustrated sitting inside looking at the blue skies outside, but hopefully get out this weekend.
Yeah, let's hope it hangs on for the weekend and we get some proper sailing conditions in. That would be great. So Ian, it was a really positive news yesterday with the press release about being able to sail double-handed boats or bigger with people from outside your household. So I think that would be welcomed by many sailors. Could you give us a bit of background about what that exactly means for the sailors?
Yes, certainly. I think the reason this feels like a bit of a breakthrough is that this is the first time we've really had some specific, reviewing of any evidence specifically around our sport. We've been trying to interpret different government guidance and clubs and club committees in particular have done a great job of trying to work out what that means for them. But other than the really specific legislation around health and safety, we've sort of been trying to use government guidance that's written for all walks of life and trying to interpret what that might mean in a boat. Well, the return to play for outdoor team sports framework, which the government announced just over 2 weeks ago, that gave us an opportunity to have a conversation with them as regards, what may or may not be appropriate for sailing. Now, that in itself is really difficult because, of course, sailing is such a broad word. We've got yachts, we've got open, we've got small keel boats, dinghies, all sorts, and of course it's complicated by the fact that we already had return to play, and many clubs were active, and many had club racing, and some even had double-handed sailing with people from different households already because they judged that be appropriate. So we basically wrote the submission to DCMS, expecting them to come back and initiate a conversation about what are the real risks, how far apart do we need to sit apart on a dinghy or on a yacht in different conditions. But of course it's incredibly nuanced. Every boat is different, every wind condition is different, many clubs and types of water, and it's all very nuanced. So what we presented here with the help of the government is a way for people to just approach assessing the risk, and I think that's the key thing that everybody needs to do. This is not a green light, everybody can go double-handed sailing without a care in the world. In the same way that when you decide whether to go to the shops or not, you weigh up the risks that might impose on yourselves, and we're encouraging the same approach. What is the boat? How far apart can I stay? Can I socially distance? If I can't socially distance, how long is it going to be for? If it's for a prolonged period of time, then what mitigation could I put in place? If I'm sat on the side of a keelboat, maybe I can put a mast on. If I'm on a dinghy, then maybe we can consciously not be sat face to face. And I sailed my RS 400 last night in the Warsash Club race, and I really made a mental note of thinking to myself, how close am I to the crew, and am I face to face? And it was amazing actually how distant we were from the majority of the race, and certainly in my opinion, less than 15 minutes in the course of that race, we would have been within 1 meter, and we were very rarely face to face.
Yeah, okay, that's a really clear description, thank you. And I mean, that's what it means for the individuals. What impact's that going to have on kind of clubs and also water boards or water authorities that are in charge? Who has the final say there, and how does that work?
Well, I think I've said it's nuanced, and I can't stress that enough. Everybody is experiencing a different journey through COVID-19. Everybody has different health conditions of their own. There will be different incidences of COVID-19 in their local area, and clubs themselves will have different facilities that present very different challenges, such as maybe they've only got one launching ramp or jetty, or one door into the clubhouse, or the car park's not very big, or they use public transport to get to their club. Every club is very, very different. And so therefore, that is why the RYA have refrained from saying this is appropriate or that is not appropriate. I think what we're trying to say is, look, we have to use our judgment here in the same way that you use your judgment on a windy day. Is it too windy to go out? Do I have the skills? I might not have the skills, but you might have the skills. So it's not appropriate for me, but it may be appropriate for you. And it's a similar situation. Everybody's appetite for risk will be slightly different. I think the real change for clubs is that whereas before we were basically telling individuals that they could use their own judgment. I think this is a real signpost to the club that it really may be appropriate, double-handed sailing, or even in the event of small keelboats or big keelboats, more than 2 people on a boat from a different household. That may well be appropriate, and they shouldn't shy away from hosting regattas, including it in their club racing, because I think the club's main focus really should remain on the practices and the protocols that they have in place ashore, and making sure that the venue is COVID secure, and of course all their staff and volunteers, particularly people who are out in rescue boats, are also safe.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thanks.
So, sorry, what I might just add, actually, Rob, is that this does not mean all clubs have to allow double-handed sailing. You know, a club might be well within their rights to decide that they do not feel it's appropriate right now, or they want to impose some crew limits. That's absolutely at their discretion, and we wouldn't want to be telling clubs what is appropriate for their exact conditions. We're just basically trying to help everybody with the ability, with the resources to be able to make the decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and those resources are provided in the guidance as well. There's quite a lot of help with that planning process, isn't there? There's the flow chart at the bottom and risk assessment kind of matrix that really helps clubs and individuals look at the risk and think about the times when they might be within a half a metre or within a metre, and it mentions kind of fleeting opportunities. Do you want to just talk us through face-to-face contact?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk us through that?
I think, happy to do that. I mean, I think the starting point is our restart guidance for clubs on the Return to Boating hub of the RYA website, and that is really the sort of the blueprint as to how to go about getting activity back going in your clubs. We've now rescinded our racing guidance because we think that's no longer necessary if clubs are abiding by the guidance I just referred to, and we still have our events guidance in place, which is particularly designed for clubs that are looking to run maybe sailing weeks or open meetings or even potentially championships. So they are the key things. We've also got a Q&A document, which is specifically trying to target some questions that we know clubs will be needing to answer. Turning to the guidance that we just published yesterday as a response to the return to recreational team sport framework, I think the starting point is there's some things that everybody has to do, and these are essential before you even think about going on the water, and that is a self-symptom check before you leave home. Assessing your own personal risk. Is it appropriate that I or my crew are out and even should be considering partaking in this activity? Is it appropriate with the level of incidence of COVID-19 in your area? How are we going to get there? You know, we're not allowed to share cars currently if we're from different families, so we need to think about that. When we get there, it's really important to register our attendance with the club, and that is so that we can test and trace in the eventuality that there is a COVID-19 positive case. We don't believe in many instances it is essential for clubs to open their changing rooms, so therefore if you can arrive in your sailing kit, that's probably a good idea. We've all heard ad nauseam the importance of cleaning our hands and other hygiene tasks, and of course we need to maintain our social distancing absolutely at all times while we're ashore and whilst afloat whenever we possibly can. But we won't always be able to do that. And so what this document does is it has a look at that and it says, right, okay, if we can stay 1 metre apart, then that means we are low risk. We probably don't need to take any further mitigating action. If we're inside 1 metre, then we need to have a little think about this. Now, if we're face to face and within 1 metre, that is going to really put us towards the increased high-end risk scale. And certainly if those are interactions for any prolonged period of time, then you probably are in the red increased risk bracket. And that's when you need to think about, what can I do to change this? I read an example just today of a Firefly sailor who, to try and avoid face-to-face contact with the crew, has changed the main sheet system to an aft main sheet system so that they spend less time actually with the potential for face-to-face contact with the crew, because they recognize they're going to be sitting within 1 metre of people. And so on and so forth. You can work through that document. And I think what we also said to the Department of Cultural Media and Sport is we believe in sailing in just about every circumstance. We should be able to stay half a metre apart. And that's certainly my experience in most of the boats that I sail. Now, I recognise that, that might be a challenge in a really small dinghy, particularly a hiking dinghy, say maybe like a cadet. But even cadets, to get your heads to half a metre apart, it probably means you've just got to shuffle apart slightly. And also, of course, being a junior class, they're probably very much in a lower end of the risk bracket than maybe some of the other classes, like potentially some of our keelboats that maybe have, older sailors who form the basis of their fleet.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And I think it's really important that clubs and sailors have a good look at those flow diagrams in the guidance, as well as checking out the other guidance you've talked about. And all of that is on the return to boating page. So anyone clicks on the RYA homepage and scrolls down, you'll see the big return to boating section. And by following that through, click that and then click for clubs and classes, and you'll get all those bits of guidance that Ian's just mentioned. And as you say, Ian, once you tie those bits of guidance together, you've got a really full package of kind of making sure that you're doing everything possible to be safe.
I think I can't stress enough how if I had to summarize all of these documents, it's use your common sense. The only way there can be no risk for everybody is to just stay at home, right? But this could go on for a year or 2 years, and the risks of just staying at home, not going sailing, not playing football, whatever else is your favorite activity, are far greater, we believe, than actually going out, enjoying the sport, assessing the risks, and making sure you use whatever mitigation is appropriate. For some of you, that could be a face covering. That may well be appropriate on a keelboat sat on the rail for a long period of time. Let's face it, in the winter, many of us wear face coverings to keep warm. So we might wear balaclavas sailing our 420s in the winter. Or maybe there's a lighter weight buff type version you could wear sailing in the summer. In fact, many professional sailors do wear those to keep the UV off because they spend so much time in direct sunlight. So think about all the mitigation that you might be able to use. Think about your level of risk. Modify your equipment and your routines on board where possible. Maybe you tack facing backwards normally and you could tack facing forwards. That would reduce the chance of face-to-face contact in the middle of a tack. Things like that, and it will be very specific, all the different boats to the different people, and that will be specific to all the clubs around the country. What we want to do is give everybody the opportunity and the confidence to get out there, to get on the water and enjoy the sport with as much information to hand so they can make the right decisions.
Yeah, and so one final question then, Ian, is kind of what does this mean for recognised training centres? We know this guidance wasn't written for them, and it wasn't written with training in mind, but what does it mean? Is there any kind of background to that?
Well, I've got to start with a caveat that I don't work in training, and so whatever I say, I might put my foot in it somewhat. But obviously, we do at senior managers level discuss some of the major challenges, and also with my experience from being a DI in my youth a long time ago, I recognise that whereas when I go racing, I spend a lot of time sat on the side of the boat, not face to face with my crew or helm, very often with one on a trapeze. Maybe one sitting inboard in light winds. It typically, with beginner training, there's a lot of face-to-face contact. There's a lot of instruction going on, which is typically delivered face-to-face. Very often you have more than 2 people in a dinghy, maybe 3 or 4 people sat in a dinghy. And of course, also, particularly with the beginner level, people may not be as capable or experienced in order to make decisions prior to the activity about what risk they may or may not be in. They might not know where they're going to sit on the boat, whereas a more experienced sailor will fully understand what to expect, what they can go afloat, and what mitigations might be appropriate. So I think we have a bit of work to do on the training side. I'm really pleased to see that many training centres are up and running. We've got single-handed training going. We recognise that the challenges are probably greater for certain elements of training than they are for the general population going cruising or racing.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Thanks. Well, thanks for all your thoughts today. I think it will really help a lot of the clubs and individuals who are planning to get back out on the water in their bigger boats, anything bigger than a single hander. So I think it's going to be really useful for them.
I'm just going to leave you with one thought, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of this thinking. I think another way to think about this as well is, what would you do if there was a COVID-19 infection within your club or training centre or community? And that is why the COVID security assure is so important. If the COVID security has been in place, it may mean there has to be a deep clean of the venue, but it probably wouldn't mean that all the people who've been in the venue at the time would have to self-isolate because of test and trace. Now, if you sail a two-person boat in close proximity to somebody else for a prolonged period of time, then it may well be that you would fall foul of that test and trace if you were lucky enough not to be infected by the other person. And so you would also, of course, drag your family bubble into that situation. So the risks are not just about becoming infected, which of course is our primary concern, but there is also a risk about getting effectively trapped, that's probably not the right word, but encapsulated within the test and trace program. So that's quite a good way to reverse engineer what is appropriate for you or not. If that is something that you really don't want to happen, then you need to keep your risk really, really low and make sure that whatever you do stays the right side of the test and trace guidelines.
Yeah, Ace, thank you very much, Ian. Really helpful. And I'm sure lots of clubs will be contacting their regional performance managers and RDOs with questions, as well as the sport development email that you can see on the screen now. Thanks very much, Ian, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks a lot, guys.